Hello everyone, my name is Stacy Stube. I am from Sobromo and Elsa Fitzgerald's studio.
My name is Shu Han, and I'm currently a student from MA Fashion Entrepreneurship and Innovation in London College of Fashion.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I did my master's at London College of Fashion as well. I graduated in 2000, I think 11.
I just want to know more about your business and yourself as an entrepreneur, because I have checked your LinkedIn profile, and I also read your interview reports.
So what I'll probably do is I'll go back to where I was when I was sitting in your shoes when I was a student, and I wanted to start my own fashion business. But there's so many different avenues to how you want to start your business. And for me, I didn't want to wait until after school ended to begin the business. I wanted to start learning in practice. I created the Fashion Entrepreneurship Society, and we got an office in Camden Town, and we started figuring out like what kind of business we'd create. And it was called, it was a concept we put forward with London Business School. Mm-hmm. And actually during the time we had a joint program with London Business School and London College of Fashion in a program called New Creative Ventures. Mm-hmm. And it was called the Language of Fashion. And the Language of Fashion was that we would go around the world, we'd film about different fashion capital cities, and we would create a fashion collection from that. So after I graduated from London College of Fashion, I worked for Heidi Klein. It's a luxury resort wear brand. I was head of retail, was there for about a year. I'd been in fashion for a long time before that. I worked in the luxury fashion sector in management, but I really wanted to develop my own collection. I eventually moved to Bali, Indonesia, and I set up my own fashion brand, and it was, again, inspired by the island, by the culture, by Indonesian dress, but infused with my own aesthetic. So I created the brand Elsa Fitzgerald. So I pre-sold the collection, I utilized Kickstarter, and I sent the collection around the world to the clients that bought it. Mm-hmm. I also created a blog because I was so far away from everyone, called Bali Fashion Dream, and it was charting the journey of setting up the fashion company in Bali. And I pre-sold the book. That was one of the Kickstarter rewards. And so after I was there for about 3 years, I worked in the manufacturing sector, which, when you're in school, you're so far removed from the development process. You might come up with original ideas, designing, but in terms of, creating the patterns, to doing the sourcing, to do the prototyping, to doing that whole journey, I got to see it, like go to the factory in Bali. I got to go and sit with the artisans as they're making traditional textiles. I really got a lot of hands-on. But my whole mission, even through my master's program, was to figure out how to give back through fashion, how to make a difference, and to understand what social responsibility is. So that's when I got involved with the natural dyes communities in Bali, and just really, I think I was just researching. It was post-education research in the field. So going to factories, working with the artisans, going to the villages, figuring out how do we do things better. And so after 3 years of being in Bali and setting up the fashion company, I then came back to my hometown. So I'm Indonesian American. I was born in Indonesia, but I grew up in the US. So when I was 3, I moved to Baltimore, and I grew up in sort of like the city part, a very industrial town, and blue collar industrial town, but a lot of industrialization had moved away. So we only have remnants of industry. When I came back, I started, again, being invited to give talks at universities, and I started recognizing that we actually once had a garment industry. As I realized we were losing an industry and we have a very small fraction of what's left, I began working for a garment manufacturer, the last one in our industry. And that was so, I got a little bit of a glimpse of the factory environment when I was developing a collection, but it was a different thing when I was actually in the factory. I was the person who's packing the boxes, bringing in the fabrics, checking on orders, checking on threads that were, things that are delaying our production. And that gave me a whole nother knowledge that I didn't know on the other side. So that then reinforced the values that I realized that we as designers are so removed that there's an education gap. So we created a fashion program, which is what Sobromo is today. It was to bridge the gap between what you learn in fashion school and then what happens when you become an entrepreneur, and how do you get into that product development side, but from a small batch prototype basis, because we're not big business. Startups were very small. We're sort of testing the market, and then now we're utilizing social media, right? We're selling directly to the consumer. The retailing space is moving away. So during this time, from when I was at university to where I am today, there's a whole chunk of retailing that's being pulled out, right? And now it's being pushed, well, maybe it's being pushed this way, where the retailer's not as important anymore, at least from the perspective of startups. So that's when we started creating this space to sort of change the conversation and empower the entrepreneur. So after that time, I then spent 3 years working in this factory and realizing we're losing industry. People are dying. Literally, people in the garment industry here dying. Their knowledge is dying. It's not being transferred because we don't teach this in fashion school. The trade schools that once taught these needle trade skills have faded because it's no longer here. Mm-hmm. So then I saw it was a tragedy. When we talk about sustainability, we talk about sustainability of materials, where it comes from, and all those things. But what about the sustainability of skills? Because we export a skill, and even offshore, when you're trying to make it faster, you rob the garment of its nutrients. You take away all the elements that make it special to make it faster and cheaper. Even luxury fashion houses remove a lining because it costs more money. It's more fabric, it's more time. So then what I wanted to do is create the digital space. So Bromo is an educational platform that teaches people these needle trade skills at a level that is industry, but in online space. Because no one in industry is going to put it into the garments anymore. So the garments you see at the Victoria Albert Museum, the things that's worth time, you will never see that in a garment. Even in the ateliers, they're taking it out of the garments. So that's why we really want to preserve the process, the learning, not because you're going to develop it and make it into a garment that you're going to sell for like 4 times the price. No, because you might want to learn how to do it, or just from a historic perspective, you want to know the basis of how was this constructed. And so that's when we created the school. So what I've moved into is what I call fashion, entertainment, and education.